Andrew Brunette says he is close to finalizing the Nashville Predators lineup. On today's Locked On Predators, we'll talk about the position that is giving Bruno the most to think about. We're going to make our lineup predictions and tell you why we think the tide may be turning for one player in particular.
You're Locked On Predators, your daily podcast on the Nashville Predators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to the Locked On Predators podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We are your free daily Nashville Predators podcast. We're a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Want to kick off this Wednesday episode, this preseason game day episode, with a shout out to, of course, all of our listeners. Welcome to our new listeners, and want to say a special shout out to our everydayers and, of course, our Locked On Predators insiders. We love getting to talk Nashville Predators hockey with you. I am Ann Kimmel. I am a writer with Penalty Box Radio, and my friends, I have a partner in crime.
You do. I'm Emma Lingen, and I'm the Predators site editor and reporter for the Hockey News.
Well, on today's show, we're going to do the thing we always say we're not going to do, friends. We are going to speculate about the lineup. With just over a week until puck drops for Nashville's very exciting regular season, it's time to have a frank discussion about what that lineup could look like. We're going to tell you what Andrew Brunette had to say about some remaining roster decisions. We're going to share our standout players from camp, and we're going to take a quick look at what the Predators may expect in tonight's preseason game against those Carolina Hurricanes. Before we dive into that, want to let you know today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Okay, Emma, before we dive into the hockey talk, I want to just personally thank you, because yesterday you talked me through what was a high anxiety sports moment that I am not used to. I love sports. I love all kinds of sports. I have a child who is named after an NFL player, so love a variety of sports. I'm not a baseball girl. I've just never been a baseball girl. You are very much a baseball person.
I am.
And you got a frantic text from me yesterday afternoon about this, the first baseball game, y'all, that I have watched in years, between Detroit Tigers and the Houston Astros. Girl, I was beside myself over that. High anxiety. I did not handle my first baseball game in years very well, did I?
Well, I mean, I think you had the appropriate amount of, stress and emotion for that. I mean, it was a crazy game. Like, I am a long-suffering Pittsburgh Pirates fan, and I will fully admit I have hopped on. I am driving the Detroit Tigers bandwagon this year. They are such a fun team to watch. And again, as a Pirates fan, I don't really know what it's like to have a fun team, so I adopted one for the postseason. And I will say I was a little surprised to even get that text from you. I was like, wow, Ann's,
who is this?
I was like, Ann's watching baseball. This is great. But no, it was a crazy, maybe a little too stressful end to the game. But yeah, game 2 of the wild card series is today. If Detroit wins it, then they advance to the next round.
I don't know if
and I think you're going to be watching now.
I was like, I don't know if I want to watch it, but I also don't know now that I can't, because that was such a horrible, wonderful first baseball game to watch in years. And I wanted to give you a shout out because you talked me off the sports ledge. I was right there. Like, I was like, what is this nonsense? There are 2 outs. The bases are loaded. What is happening here? It was not
baseball is not boring. I will fight anyone who says that it is, but I know we're not here to talk about baseball. No. We're here to talk about hockey. Yes. But until, on days when you don't have hockey to watch, turn on some baseball.
Yeah,
It's
I learned
exciting.
that yesterday. Let me tell you something. And you're right, Emma. This is not locked on the Detroit Tigers, although maybe it could be. I don't know. But we're going to move from postseason in one sport to preseason, almost, oh my goodness, almost regular season in another sport. Again, Nashville Predators kick off their season a week from tomorrow. The regular season we have all been waiting for since July 1st kicks off. And we had a chance yesterday to see some forward lines in training camp. We also had a chance to talk to Andrew Brunette about lineup decisions because, friends, there's been a huge paring down of the roster, and it's getting to be about that time, Andrew Brunette, where we have questions and we need answers. So here are the forward lines that we saw yesterday in training camp. Forsberg, O'Reilly, Nyquist, Stamkos, Novak, Marchessault, Evangelista, Sissons, Tomasino, Smith, McCarron, and Jankowski. So, Emma, we're looking at these lines. Some of these lines are the same as what we have seen basically through training camp. So, you're looking at these lines, of course, keeping that top line together. Agree with me that that's kind of a no-brainer, short of them having some sort of massive breakup where they can't work together anymore.
Yeah, no, that's the kind of line you don't break them up until they give you a reason to.
Yeah. Yeah. We're not going to Yoko Ono that top line. 36% of Nashville's goals were scored by that top line. So we are keeping Ryan O'Reilly with his Swedish meatballs. And I really feel like that is a lock. The second line has been so consistent. And that has been a big surprise to me in training camp with Stamkos, Novak, and Marchessault. And I think the question that everybody has is not how good will Steven Stamkos be? How good will Jonathan Marchessault be? Y'all, they're going to be good. But can Tommy Novak distribute the puck well enough for Stamkos and Marchessault to be high offensive impact players? What is your answer to that question?
Yes. Next question.
Moving on.
No, I think I mean we've said this before. I think that Tommy Novak on this line, that was a big question, is like, is he gonna, is this moment gonna be too big for him? Is he gonna look out of place on a line with those guys? And I think the answer, at least to this point, is no. He looks like he fits in there. And both of the wingers, Marchessault and Stamkos, were very complimentary of Novak as well. And, how skilled he is as a passer, and how he is a guy that has kind of, I mean, he's the ultimate under the radar guy. Like he is.
Yeah.
And it fits his personality too, I think. And so I think that he's just kind of like, yeah, let's just play hockey. But it's like, dude, you're really good at playing hockey. I don't even think you realize that. So I think that that's a line that, and back to what you said initially, which is it was a little surprising at how consistent that line has been throughout camp, just because we predicted, as I think did most people, that we would see every combination under the sun. Now we have seen every combination under the sun in the preseason games, mostly just because
Very true.
not everyone plays in every game. And so you're going to get different combinations of players that way. So that, I guess, is where we're seeing all the different combos. But in practice, in that kind of controlled environment, that's where you're seeing the consistency. And the more I think about it, the more I've kind of come to realize that, you know what, we've talked about this before. This is a very unique system that these guys are coming into. It took last year's team more than half a season to figure it out. And it would probably behoove everyone to have as much consistency as possible.
Yeah.
At least at the onset. And, for everyone's sake, I mean, the new guys, obviously, to get them kind of up to speed on the system, but then Novak as well, to kind of, we're talking about, this is a guy that you want to be your 2C, but the question has always been, well, can he do it? And it's like, you're going to best put him in the best positioned to succeed, if he is in that role consistently, you need to kind of give him a fair shake. So I think that that's, kind of what we're seeing now, at least in practice.
And I think you hit on something that's very important, and that's the fact that Stamkos and Marchessault like playing with him. They have been very complimentary in situations where they could have said less. They said more about Tommy
Right.
Novak, and
Like,
no,
you don't expect them to come out and be like, "Yeah, he's not that good." But, like, they like you said, they could have just, they could have said less, and
said
they
less.
were, they elaborated quite a bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Marchessault talked about him having just a high end skill as far as seeing the ice. Does he have the same numbers as maybe the centers those two players are used to? No. I mean, good gravy. Last season, Nikita Kucherov had 100 assists. I mean, he was dealing like a blackjack guy at MGM, like just shoveling them out. Jack Eichel in 63 games had 37 assists, but let's not overlook what Tommy Novak could do. 71 games played last season, 27 assists. And I think that number is going to go up on this line. So I really think we will see this line, like you said, coming out. Is this where they're going to finish in March and April? I don't want to guarantee that, but I think that there's a good chance for it. So coming up, we're going to look at these bottom 6 lines. Some things we want to look at. We're going to talk about that open Sherwood space on that 4th line. And Phil Tomasino, is he getting a fair shake? Today's episode is brought to you by our great friends at Game Time. If you are looking forward to seeing this new looking Predators roster this season, or you just want to have a good time at a live event, you have got to check out Game Time. Game Time is the fastest and easiest way to get tickets for your favorite sports, music, theater, comedy, and so much more. Game Time now has this great new feature. It's called Game Time Picks, and it makes getting tickets for your favorite events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out all of the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste your time going through thousands and thousands of tickets. Game Time has great deals right now on tickets for local sporting events, Nashville SC, the Tennessee Titans. Heck, if you want to watch some Vanderbilt football, you can get tickets at Game Time. If you love Post Malone's new country album, you can get seats to see him at Nissan Stadium this month, and tickets to The Price is Right, my friends at TPAC, they're on sale there as well. Game Time has a low price guarantee and the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. So, Emma, one of the players that we have taken a long look at in camp, who, as of this recording, still here in Nashville, we're going to hop down to that 4th line and talk a little bit about Zachary L'Heureux. We have seen him play a lot in camp with Cole Smith and Michael McCarron. Yesterday at camp, we saw Mark Jankowski slide into that spot. And so I think we need to just have an honest conversation about what that 4th line, that identity line, will look like on opening night. And here is what I will say. I think Zachary L'Heureux has done absolutely everything he should to be at camp and to make Andrew Brunette really think about it, and to weigh whether he is ready or not. I think he's done everything right, but I'm not sure that he is ready for opening night. Or let me rephrase that. It's not maybe even so much whether Zachary L'Heureux is ready, whether Andrew Brunette is ready for Zachary L'Heureux to play on opening night. So do you think it's more likely that we're going to see Jankowski on that line or L'Heureux? And how do you feel about how those two look playing with McCarron and Smith on a line that's been so important to Nashville?
I mean, I've been saying this from the beginning. Zachary L'Heureux is a fantastic hockey player, and he will do great things one day, I believe, with with the Predators at the NHL level. That day is not today, and it is not anytime soon. I think that, this is incredibly valuable experience for him and development time for him in camp, getting all those reps on that line with those guys. I think that it really is the most opportunity, or the biggest opportunity he's had to kind of prove to this coaching staff and be like, hey, this is what I can do. But I think that's, again, I don't want us to put the cart before the horse or think that it's, anything more than it is, which is an extended look right now. Again, training camp now at this point, you know what your lineup is, or like, maybe not your lineup, but who your roster is. You know who your opening night roster is. At this point, you are just determining if someone on that roster gets hurt or something happens, who are going to be the first guys that we call up. And that's where I think Zachary L'Heureux absolutely fits into that category. So he's getting the extended look. And I think he's shown that, yes, he is, capable of hanging with those guys. But like you said, Andrew Brunette, we saw it last year too, maybe a little bit more hesitant to trust the younger players in certain situations. And so I think that, again, I think it's going to be, for Zach L'Heureux, it's going to be more valuable for him to actually be playing, and he is going to spend a lot more time doing that in Milwaukee than he is in Nashville.
Yeah. We talked to Andrew Brunette about, like, what are you looking for in that spot vacated by Kiefer Sherwood, who, by the way, the other night played in a preseason Vancouver game with life coach Kevin Lankinen, and it was excruciating to watch. But he played just like you remember Kiefer Sherwood, spicy Kiefer Sherwood. And we asked Andrew Brunette, what are you looking for to fill that spot? And he was talking about, like, I want somebody who's going to hunt pucks, somebody who's going to play physical, somebody who is going to be hard on pucks. And, Zachary L'Heureux does all of those things. Here is where I lean with you to Jankowski. And my guess is we're probably leaning with Andrew Brunette. Zachary L'Heureux has that skill set, but he has 0 games of NHL experience and 1 season in the AHL under his belt. Mark Jankowski played 32 NHL games last season. He has 354 NHL games. So he can do a lot of what Andrew Brunette wants done on that line, and he's got a lot more experience. So for me, I lean to Mark Jankowski. And as much as Zachary L'Heureux would be so fun to see right out of the gate in the NHL, I really feel like Jankowski is going to get that opportunity. And I don't feel bad about that. Like, I feel like that's a pretty good fit, I would say.
Yeah, I certainly wouldn't look at it as, Jankowski is blocking L'Heureux from a roster spot or anything like that, because it's not the be all end all here. Like, it's like you said, he's a journeyman. He's got a ton of experience. He's very consistent and reliable. You know what you're going to get from him. Yes, L'Heureux has the higher upside, but right now that's maybe not quite as important, just in the situation that they're currently in. Plus, I think if we're talking about what fits in on that line, you talked about hunting pucks and being aggressive on pucks. Jankowski does that extremely well. And he's got quite the size advantage on Zach L'Heureux as well. And so I think if you're trying to box out guys, and hang with Michael McCarron and Cole Smith, who are also not small guys, I think that his size and his physicality do profile pretty well on that line.
Yeah, I would agree with that. He's a little bit, and I say this respectfully, he's a little bit a poor man's Colton Sissons, in that he does a lot of things well enough that you trust him in whatever role you need from him. So yeah, I feel okay about that. Let's talk about this third line of Evangelista, Sissons, and Tomasino. And the one I think we really need to talk about is Phil Tomasino, because those, our longtime listeners, our everydayers will know that you and I have been like, oh, I don't know about that Phil Tomasino. And not so much us, but I don't know that he is going to get a chance. Like, it was like, if ever there was a guy ripe for a fresh start, it might be Phil Tomasino. And we don't say that lightly. We say that because we heard what Andrew Brunette had to say at the end of the season. Of course, remember Tomasino went to the AHL in February and finished out the season. But these were the very frank comments that Andrew Brunette had about Phil Tomasino at the end of the season.
Yeah, the reports I've got, he's played real well down there. I think it's probably been good for him. I think up here, we talked about it mid-season where we felt for his development to have an opportunity to be the type of player we believe he can be. He needs a little bit more. He needed more ice time. He needed a bigger role. He had to grow a little bit, both on and off the ice, I think, a little bit. And from all reports I got, he's right on course. Now, in saying that, for me, I think he needs to grab the little of our identity that we've created here, and he has to have a little bit more of that in him. And if he can, and if he puts the work in, and he's relentless, then his skill will take over. But if he, at different times this year where he wanted the skill first without the work, I'm not sure he has a chance to play for us next year. So we're building him. I think it's, like I said, it's been really good for him. This playoff run will be really, really critical for his career, and I hope he rises to the moment, and I believe he will.
So those were very frank comments from Andrew Brunette back in end of April, beginning of May about Phil Tomasino. What have you seen from Phil Tomasino in training camp, Emma, that makes you think maybe the tide is turning for Phil Tomasino and Andrew Brunette? Because it really looked like they were headed for a breakup.
It really did. And it made you kind of wonder, is there, he didn't say anything with any sort of finality. Brunette didn't last year, but it sounded a little bit like, has he maybe already made up his mind? And so, but, it was clear he hadn't. And I think that, as far as what we've seen from Tomasino in camp, we go back to talking about the way you were talking about that second line with the consistency that we've seen that combination. I think the same could be said about this third line with Tomasino, Sissons, and Evangelista. And I think that what that says above all is that, okay, they're giving Tomasino a really good close look here. And they're not just kind of popping him in, as the extra forward, or they're not, just trying. They are really giving him every chance right now to prove that he belongs there. And from what I can tell, I mean, it certainly seems like he has risen to the occasion there.
Yeah. Coming up, we're going to hear from Phil Tomasino. Yesterday after practice, I got a chance to ask him, what do you want Andrew Brunette to see in your game at training camp? We'll tell you what he had to say about that. It's the most wonderful time of the year for sports fans. Baseball playoffs are underway. The NFL season is in full swing, and the NHL is about to kick off next week. And the best place to celebrate is with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you are an NFL fan, you can kick off your season with a big return at FanDuel. Check it out. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can view the latest stats, live play-by-play, and so much more, all on the same page where you place your bets. And you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets guaranteed with your first $5 bet. So check out the deals and the action at FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, Emma, we were talking about Phil Tomasino and how it felt like, we weren't sure how much of a chance, how much of a look he was going to get from Andrew Brunette after kind of a bumpy last season. Andrew Brunette has been very complimentary about him. And yesterday after practice, I got a chance to chat with Phil Tomasino, and I asked him, what do you want Andrew Brunette to see from you in training camp? This is what he had to say.
I mean, I feel like a lot of different things, but I think I've improved a lot of different areas of my game, and I feel like this time around I kind of know the system, kind of know everything. So kind of a little bit more familiar with everything for sure. But I put a lot of work in this summer. And, I think my pace of play was a big thing. I think I've really worked on that this summer and really improved that. So that was probably the biggest thing for me, I think, to work on. But I think all around, I think my game is hopefully gone to the next level. And like I said, just can't wait to get started here.
So I think a couple things have worked in Phil Tomasino's favor. I think he's much more familiar with the system. I think he's much more familiar with the pace. But I also think that there is a confidence. We heard Andrew Brunette use the word mindset when talking about Phil Tomasino at training camp. But I will say, just in talking to him yesterday, and I'm just strictly going off vibes. This is not reporting. I'm just reading the room, reading the vibes. He just seems lighter. He seems like there is joy in his game again. He seems comfortable and excited about what he's bringing to the ice. And it felt a little bit different. Like, just talking to Phil Tomasino just felt a little bit different yesterday at training camp, which was really, I think, great to see.
Yeah, I would agree. I agree with you on the vibes. The vibes are good.
Vibes are good.
And I think that I just in general have been very impressed with the maturity with which he has handled the situation. Again, not that there was any kind of messy, public falling out or anything like that, but just, I think that it speaks a lot to his character and his maturity that he was able to, to come back with his head held high and, really just show, hey, this is what I can do. And this is what I'm here to do.
Yeah. And you can, when you're kind of faced with sort of some pushback about like, we need more, you can shut down and be frustrated, or you can take a deep breath and embrace it. And he's young. Remember, this is like a young player. I think what he's done with it, what he's brought to training camp really speaks well of him. And I think it's very encouraging also for Andrew Brunette to see. Here is one area where Andrew Brunette is still kind of wrestling. And we heard from him yesterday talking about depth defensemen. He said, and I quote, "They're all probably ready to play, and it's whoever's going to put their best foot forward." And here's the thing, Emma, it's a long list of depth defensemen that Andrew Brunette has to make some decisions on. We're talking Del Gaizo, we're talking Molendyke, Wilsby, Blankenberg. Oh my God.
Stastny, who isn't even here.
Stastny, and that's a whole nother thing. We have not seen Spencer Stastny at training camp. He is out for personal reasons. We don't have any estimated time for him to rejoin the team. We don't know, where he's at, what's going on, and we don't care, and bless him and hope he is doing well. But even with Stastny not here right this second, Bruno is still trying to figure out who the best depth defenseman is. Tell Andrew Brunette who the best depth defenseman is in your mind.
Marc Del Gaizo. We are locked on Marc Del Gaizo.
We really are.
I think, but it's one of those things where, I mean, you have to look at it from a bunch of different angles. First of all, it is kind of crazy because, as much as, like you said, I really hope the best for Spencer Stastny and whatever he is dealing with right now. But, you do kind of think with him not being in the picture at training camp, you would think, oh, that almost makes it easier for Andrew Brunette to make a decision. It's like, well, not really,
No.
because there's still a lot of other options. And so, but anyway, looking at this from different angles, we talked about Andrew Brunette is maybe a little bit less willing to trust younger, less experienced players in these leverage situations. And I think that where Del Gaizo certainly has a leg up in that regard is the fact that he did play some games in the NHL under Andrew Brunette last year. And I think he really held his own. I think that he, again, very reliable. You know what you're going to get from him. He's very disciplined, doesn't make a lot of mistakes. And he seems to, his style of play, that puck hunting and that hustle really fits the Andrew Brunette system. And so I think that, and to me, so that's one angle, but to me, looking at it, I'm like, I just don't think he has anything left to prove in the AHL.
Yes.
And you know, that, to be fair, the same could probably be said about a few other players, but I think that again, where he has the leg up, at least right now, is he already has that NHL experience. We know how he's going to do. And not to say that, you know, oh, guys like Adam Wilsby are never going to get a chance. No, it's just in this situation, you know, someone like an Adam Wilsby, he's better as your next call up, like your next man up when you need him. But if you're looking to build out your roster right now, and who are your most reliable, your go-to guys, kind of the same way we talked about with Mark Jankowski. You know what
Yes.
you're going to get from him.
Yeah.
And I think that is going to be the priority at this point. And then guess what? If something doesn't work out, you know, if it turns out to be the wrong decision, then they make adjustments and we move on. But I think that right now, to me, there is absolutely no way that Marc Del Gaizo does not start the season on the opening night roster.
I have to agree with you. I would be shocked if he didn't, for the reasons that you mentioned. I also think, and Andrew Brunette has said, like, Adam Wilsby, this is his first real look at him, and he's been very impressed, and rightly so. But when you look at their games, they both do a lot of things right, a lot of things Brunette would like. Marc Del Gaizo, though, this is what I will say about him, and I've said this before, and I stand by this. Marc Del Gaizo may not be the defenseman who finishes an offensive play, but he sure as heck is going to be one of the defensemen who kicks one off. And I think Andrew Brunette likes that. I think Andrew Brunette's system of like, hey, defenseman, get the puck, get it up the ice. That is Marc Del Gaizo's jam.
Again,
You know?
I keep going back to when he was in college at UMass. Who was his defensive partner his freshman year? A guy named Cale Makar.
Yep.
You maybe think that might have something to do with his ability to seamlessly join in on the rush. And obviously, like you said, he's not necessarily the finisher, because Makar's the finisher, but he's
Mhm.
the starter.
Yes.
And he is the, the agitator. Like he can get things going
Mhm.
when you need them to. And that, like I said, tailor-made for Brunette's system.
Yeah. I got a chance to chat with Marc Del Gaizo yesterday after practice. It was so fun to talk with him. And I asked him about playing with Cale Makar. Like, what was your biggest takeaway from him? And he said his preparation was outrageous. He's like, this is a guy who obviously just naturally talented, but prepared and prepared and prepared. And he talked about, I really took that away. Like, you have to be prepared. And I think Marc Del Gaizo came into, I would even say, last year's training camp, but certainly this year's training camp, so prepared for an opportunity in the NHL. The other thing I want to say, you mentioned talking about him back in college. If you all are bored, let me throw this out at you. YouTube the semifinal game, and I believe it was 2019. I could be wrong, between UMass and Denver overtime. Who scores the winning goal? Marc freaking Del Gaizo. I went back and rewatched it and then ended up like, typical me. I'm like, tell me about that moment. What was it like? Because it was just so exciting to watch that. So I thought that was great. I do want to throw out another fascinating tidbit that I think we all should chew on as we get ready to wrap up this episode. I said, Marc Del Gaizo, what has been the best thing about training camp off the ice? His answer, living with Luke Evangelista. Y'all, to be the ring camera in that house. Can you imagine?
To be a fly on the wall.
I just laughed out loud because the image.
Just some great one-liners coming from there too. I feel like,
I mean,
yeah.
Nashville is not prepared for.
But as you like to say, and they're also young sprouts, and I sometimes I get a little concerned about. I'm like picturing them eating cereal out of Frisbees, like on and sleeping on a mattress on the floor. Like I that's what I'm picturing, and I'm like, ugh. But hopefully Marc Del Gaizo makes the opening night roster. He can get his own place. He can buy some furniture, some
IKEA.
and some bowls to eat his cereal out of. I don't know. Maybe I'm like way underestimating them. They probably have like nicer silverware than I do. Who knows?
I don't know. But I can see
they can certainly afford it. I just don't know if they have it.
They do that though.
Yeah.
I thought that was so amazing. Apparently they roomed together in Milwaukee, always had a great time. And he said it's been so fun. You know, they go home, you know, kind of talk about what's been going on, just sit back, kick back, relax, I think he did mention they go out to eat, which makes me think that at least a couple nights a week, it's not cereal out of a Frisbee. So, you know, that's reassuring for the mom and me. Please, boys.
I know.
Don't
well,
make
you're
me have to bring you a roast.
you're going to invite them to your house for Thanksgiving. I already know.
I know.
Yeah.
Not American Thanksgiving because, you know, Mark has somewhere to go.
Yeah.
And he'll probably take Luke actually, but yeah.
But hey, it's always there.
So anyway, chew on the fun things that you think Marc Del Gaizo and Luke Evangelista are talking about in the evenings, or what video games they play, or what shows they're binging, because friends, the ideas are endless. But great chance to talk with them tonight. Nashville will be playing the Carolina Hurricanes. It's looking like they're going to get Carolina's best lineup. We will see how the Predators do against the Hurricanes in tonight's game. And of course, Emma and I will be back tomorrow to talk about the game, what we saw, and what we think of the performance that the Predators put on the ice. So be sure you tune in tomorrow's episode. Before we sign off, Emma, let everyone know where they can find you in your work.
You can find me on social media at Emma_Lingen, and you can find my work at the Hockey News.
And you can find me on social media at AnnK_Mama on Ice. You can find my work at Penalty Box Radio as well. That's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Predators podcast. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Enjoy the game tonight against Carolina. We'll be back tomorrow to talk all about it. We'll see you then.